Friends are always telling me to get this microphone out of my face. How does that look? Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to my YouTube channel. On this channel, we talk about things that are happening in the world of MMA and combat sports. So things like, boxing, and maybe we'll talk about jiu-jitsu competitions. I don't know. Anyway, my name is Drew, and today I want to talk about the fight that's happening between Jose Aldo and Jeremy Stephens. It's happening on the UFC on Fox card in just a couple weeks. I believe it's July 28th. I think I saw there. I've forgotten the date, to be honest with you. But anyway, it's in a couple weeks, and it's a great fight. It's a great Fox card for starters. But this fight between Jose Aldo versus Jeremy Stephens could very well be a main event type of fight for a fight night or even a UFC on Fox card. I think a lot of people right now have sort of forgotten, obviously not forgotten who Jose Aldo is, but his last 4 fights haven't been kind of the highlight reel or the best part of his career. He had that infamous loss to Conor McGregor. He sort of bounced back against Frankie Edgar, and then a couple of losses to Max Holloway. And now, the world has sort of turned on Jose Aldo a little bit, just to sort of say he's kind of done and he's past his prime. And I'm not saying that he's not past his prime, but this fight between Jose Aldo and Jeremy Stephens is just phenomenal. I'm so glad that it is on a free card. That'll make it a little bit easier to watch. I don't have to spend as much to watch Jose fight, which is the first time I can remember in a really long time. I used to watch WEC when I was a student in Windsor, and I would have to, I had no mechanism to get it because it was on the Versus channel. And I didn't have television back then at all, and I would stream it. But streaming pay-per-views back then, it wasn't like it is today, where you just kind of pull up a thing, and it's there. It's pretty easy to find. And I seem to remember a website like Justin TV, I think is what it was called. And I think that Joe Rogan even used to stream his podcast on that site, and I had to use that to watch WEC. And I think the first fight I remember watching Jose Aldo on was his fight against, it might have even been the fight against Uriah Hall, because at that point I had kind of learned about Uriah Hall and who he was. He wasn't fighting in the UFC yet, but the UFC was starting to promote that lower weight class, and because I guess they would have had the intention to bring it on into the UFC. And it might have been that Uriah Faber, my goodness. What a silly mistake. I'm sure somebody's going to criticize that, call me a casual fan or whatever. Anyway, but Uriah Faber fight, I think that might have been the first one that I saw. And that fight stood out in my mind so infamously because, his leg was just so bad after that fight. Ever since then, I've been a fan. You can't not like Jose Aldo. You can't not like his fighting style, in my opinion. And while not every single fight of his has been the most exciting thing we've ever seen in the octagon, for the most part, Jose Aldo is the kind of fighter that fans want to watch. And I'm excited for him in this fight. To give you, my just general thoughts on it, I think that this is a good matchup for Jose Aldo. I think it's a good matchup to bring him back, maybe get some confidence going again for him, because those fights against Max Holloway are just, the worst possible scenario for a fighter like Jose Aldo to look his best in, as opposed to like a Frankie Edgar fight, which is one of the best examples of his work. It's one of the best examples of how high a level Jose Aldo is. But then you got Max Holloway, and the thing about these fights is that, I mentioned in one of my previous videos that Max Holloway has this unique ability to sort of bait people into brawls and chaos scenarios. And in the first fight, you can imagine Jose being a little bit almost caught off guard by the skill level of Max Holloway. and he actually had looked really good in the first couple rounds. But Jose's never really been known that much for his cardio, and we know, he's gassed in fights before, and so he did really well in those first couple rounds against Max Holloway. Max had a really good game plan and strategy to just sort of weather the storm a little bit, and as Jose got tired, Max really began to capitalize on that. It's ironic to sort of see what Max Holloway is going through now, because it kind of reminds me of maybe some of the challenges that Jose Aldo had in his career previously, and so it's just interesting. But Max would sort of wait for him to get a little bit more tired and then use this as time to really capitalize. And Max Holloway, like I said, would really get him in the second fight. This was a lot more clear. Jose's doing okay, and then Max gets him up against the fence and just begins to exchange punches, not even strikes. There's really no kicking. It's just exchanging punches like a street fight, really. And there's no other way to put it, where they're just sort of brawling there. But Max Holloway is better in that brawl than Jose is. And I remember like watching the fight as a big Jose Aldo fan, going, no, like, don't do this, don't get involved in this. And sure enough, like, Max is just better in that scenario. Now, Jeremy Stephens, what makes this fight so compelling is that Jeremy himself is kind of a bit of a brawler. Like, we've sort of seen him in the past couple fights maybe get away from that. Well, maybe not the last couple fights. I mean, the Emmett fight was a bit of a brawl, but like the Gilbert Melendez fight, where he was a little bit more tactical, used that leg kick to just really, I don't want to say point his way to a decision, but be smart about how he was going to fight a guy like Melendez, who in a brawling scenario is also very, very good. So Jose Aldo versus Jeremy Stephens is kind of an interesting fight from that perspective, because in that brawl scenario, maybe Jose Aldo doesn't look his best, but at the same time, I just don't see Jeremy at Jose's level. And Jeremy Stephens is a good fighter, but he's always kind of been like a win 2, lose 2, win 1, lose 2, win, like, he's actually never had in the UFC a string of four wins in a row. He's on a 3-fight win streak, and that's good, and he's looked really great in those fights. But I don't think he's at Jose Aldo's level. And it's really easy for us to maybe think, well, of course he is. Like, you're a moron. Jose Aldo's done and all these things. But he's not done. He's not even close to done. And, well, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration. He might be close to done. He's certainly past, I think, his prime. But we got to remember, I mean, Jose Aldo is only 31 years old. And it's originally, for me, when I was kind of thinking about this fight, I thought, oh, you have the younger Jeremy Stephens versus the veteran Jose Aldo, who's sort of on the other end of his career. Jeremy Stephens is actually a year older than Jose Aldo, if I saw correctly there. He's 32. Jose Aldo's 31. Jose's just been in the game for so long, and so is Jeremy. And this fight is really cool for that reason. But Jose Aldo is far from being done. I think he's still got quite a bit of career left in him, and I don't think, a 13-second knockout to Conor McGregor. I mean, I want to see that fight again. I would love to see Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo. Even Conor has sort of said, like, we it's a shame that we didn't actually get to see a fight, because I would love to see that fight. But you have a 13-second loss to Conor McGregor, which doesn't really tell us much of anything other than Conor's got great accuracy, and he kind of made Jose going maybe a little bit recklessly at the beginning there. And then you have these losses to the same opponent in Max Holloway. So what we know is that Max Holloway is just, I don't want to say a better fighter than Jose Aldo, but up against Jose Aldo, he's a bad matchup for him. He's a bad matchup for Aldo. And on those 2 nights, he was better. And you know what? He might be overall the better fighter as well. But that doesn't say that Jose Aldo still doesn't have a lot left in him. I mean, it wasn't very long ago that Aldo was beating Frankie Edgar. And if you've been paying attention to some of my videos, you know that I think very highly of Frankie Edgar. I was shocked to see what happened between him and Ortega. I thought that he was, outside of Aldo, the best featherweight in the division. I still think that Frankie Edgar has a real shot at the title. I think he could beat Max Holloway. And I think that that's a better example of the kind of work that we've seen, that we can expect to see out of Aldo for the next couple years. I mean, he's still got, like I said, 31 years old, maybe on the other end of his career, but he's still got a lot left in him. And I think that he will be able to display his experience against somebody like Jeremy Stephens. Now, Jeremy might really try and bring the fight to him. Even though they do kind of have that common opponent in Frankie Edgar, and I think a lot of us could be really tempted to say, well, they have that, Aldo beat Frankie and Frankie beat Jeremy Stephens, and that's it's a tempting thing to do, but the way that Frankie fought Stephens is not going to be the way that Aldo's going to fight Stephens. But I still think that Aldo's ability to not get taken down, because he has absolutely impeccable takedown defense, but ability to just be more technical and evade when he needs to evade and get in and out, land those leg kicks. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if Jeremy Stephens still uses a lot of those leg kicks and do damage, and just sort of display higher level MMA striking than what Jeremy Stephens has, which is a lot of power, a lot of aggression, and an ability to sort of typically bully fighters. I don't see him being able to bully Aldo. And I think that this fight's really interesting for that reason. I think it's sort of a good, I don't want to call it a tune-up fight, because obviously Jeremy Stephens is more than a tune-up fight for somebody like Aldo. I mean, this is a competitive matchup, and Aldo's going to need to sort of keep his so I've literally never used this term before, like P's and Q's about him, because if he gets sloppy, which I would argue he kind of got a little bit sloppy in the Max Holloway fight, and if he gets sloppy against Jeremy Stephens, it's going to be a bad time. Jeremy Stephens has real stopping power, and for all that I've said about Jose Aldo having a lot left in him, he has had a couple of TKOs and knockouts, and those things take a toll on you over time. And so if he does get sloppy in the fight, I could see him getting rocked. You know what? And as I say it out loud, I could almost see him getting rocked regardless in this fight. I don't think necessarily he'll get TKO'd or knocked out, but I could see him sort of getting rocked or maybe even dropped in this fight, but recovering. And that would be really telling to see where Jose is at in his career. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he gets clipped and he doesn't recover. Maybe he stays down. Maybe there's a clean knockout, and then we would know a little bit more about where Jose is in his career. But I think he's got a lot left in him, and by a lot left, I mean like three more years, maybe 4 more years. Like I said, 31. I think that there's some of these Brazilian fighters, and we got JDS fighting this weekend, and Nogueira back in the day, where they're actually pretty young and they look way older than they are because they've just been in so many wars, and the way that they train, it just makes them look older than they really are, both in physical appearance and in fighting ability. And so that's take it for what it's worth. But and there's a bias there. I'm a big Jose Aldo fan, so I want to see more from him. But I think he's got a lot left. I think that he wins this fight I actually think that he wins this fight pretty dominantly. And that's not to take away from Jeremy Stephens. I don't think he stops Jeremy, because we've seen out of Jose, again, he will get tired in the later rounds. And we've seen, there's a lot of decisions in his career, but I think he can, and I guess this is a 3-round fight, which is the first time Aldo's been in a 3-round fight in a really long time. So that favors his ability, because again, that longer term cardio thing in the 4th and 5th round. I'm actually pretty surprised that this isn't the main event for this card. Alvarez versus Poirier is the main event, and so it's a 3-round fight. That's good for Jose. And what was I saying about that? I think in a 3-round fight, he can pretty easily just sort of pick away at Jeremy until he gets a unanimous decision. I think that this is a unanimous decision victory for Jose Aldo, and I think it's a 30-27 across the board, across all judges. I think it's a pretty clear-cut victory for Aldo. Now, MMA, is an interesting sport. I could be very wrong, and the fight could go either way. That's what makes this fight so compelling. That's what makes the sport so compelling. But if I was a betting man, I would bet on Aldo by unanimous decision in this fight. And hopefully we can see him sort of get back on track. I don't want to see him anywhere near the title for a very long time, certainly while Max Holloway is holding the belt. I'd like to see him just have some really good fights. He's likely kind of the new gatekeeper in the division, and I'd like to see him just get that confidence back and see what happens with the belt at 145. You know, if Frankie Edgar was the champion, maybe those guys shouldn't fight again. But if Ortega was the champion, I'd be interested in seeing that fight. I just don't want to see him against Max Holloway again, because I think we've seen how that fight goes. I think it goes that way 9 times out of 10, probably even 10 times out of 10. That's how that fight goes. But anywhere else, you know, I'm paying to watch. I would pay to watch Jose Aldo, because he's an exciting fighter. He's one of the highest level mixed martial artists to ever do it. And just because he has some losses, you can't take that away from him. I mean, almost all of the greats have those losses. You know, a lot of people after this weekend are calling Daniel Cormier the greatest of all time. And regardless of the steroid things and all this other stuff, you know, he does have those losses to John Jones. George St. Pierre has his losses. I mean, it doesn't stop them from being great. And Jose Aldo is great. He would be on my top 10 list of all-time fighters, favorite fighters. He's just awesome. And I'm excited to see what he has to bring on a couple Saturdays from now. So that's pretty exciting. I'm going to make some more videos on this UFC on Fox card. It's such a good card. It's kind of like this card of former champions, right? You have Eddie Alvarez, you have Joanna Jędrzejczyk, you have Jose Aldo. And it's sort of this, I think in a way, it's kind of this test to see, like, what do these former champions have left? It's an awesome card. I'm going to make a full card breakdown video on what I think about every fight on that card. And then I'll make a couple of individual videos like this one, probably one on that Alvarez-Poirier fight. Maybe not. I mean, I'm not super interested in that fight. I'm going to watch it, and I do like it, but it's, you know, I'm not super interested in it. I might just leave it to the full card breakdown. And then the Joanna Jędrzejczyk fight versus Tisha Torres as well. Maybe I'll make one on that. So keep an eye out for those videos. Also, you got UFC 227 coming out in a couple weeks. What a good fight between TJ and Cody. Who doesn't want to watch that fight again? Man, that was a good fight. So keep an eye out for those videos. I really appreciate you guys watching this content. And thank you for leaving the encouraging comments. And for those who don't leave encouraging comments, well, thanks for watching anyway. I appreciate it. And yeah, we'll keep putting out videos, and we'll see you in that one. And let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thanks. Bye.
Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to watch this content. I'm just a fan with an opinion and a camera, but I love the sport of MMA. So if you want to see some more videos, you can take a look here on the right of this screen. And other than that, I will catch you in the next video.